Devonnia Kate Shulin lost her life on August 15, 2023 during childbirth to a rare and unpredictable condition known as amniotic fluid embolism, or AFE. She was a devoted daughter, sister, wife, and mother of three, Chase, Katie, and Maverick. She was born in Salem, Indiana on February 14, 1989. Growing up with two older brothers, she was brought up tough and independent, but she had a huge heart. Her brother remembers the first time he met her.
I met Devonnia. It was the day she was born, and I remember being so mad at her because me and my brother shared the same birthday. We were born exactly 4 years apart. And she was born on February 14th. She was a Valentine's girl. And I remember going to the hospital and looking in the window and just being so mad because she was not born on our day. I thought all siblings were supposed to be born on the same day.
She was a 2007 graduate from Salem High School. Her brother describes her as driven and empathetic, which led her to her career as an EMT. After graduating from high school, she became a paramedic and went on to serve as Deputy Director for the Washington County EMS and the Deputy Chief Director of the Scott County EMS in Scottsboro. In a speech to the U.S. House of Representatives, Congresswoman Erin Houchin said in a speech about co-sponsoring H.R. 3838, the Preventing Maternal Deaths Reauthorization Act of 2023.
It's impossible for me in the time I have here today to capture just what made Devonnia so special, so admired. She was known for being a comforting presence for many families in their darkest moments. She was a steady hand in times of crisis, saving many lives during her career. Devonnia's life was meaningful, yet tragically too short. It's difficult to imagine women can die during childbirth in the United States today, but they do. Devonnia left behind incredible loved ones like her husband Michael, also a public servant with the fire department, and three beautiful children, Chase, Katie, and Maverick. We will never forget Devonnia and the example that she was and still is to us all.
Devonnia was devoted to her family. However, her huge heart didn't stop her at home. She continued her caring ways with others in her daily life at work. Devonnia started her jump medic position at the Salem Speedway in 2020. She was both chase medic and with the Washington County Ambulance Service and jump medic with the Speedway. Being raised in a racing family, with her two uncles owning a race team, this only made sense. She worked every event she could get her hands on. When most people think or speak of Devonnia, they use the word mentor.
She was just very welcoming and very nurturing and very loving. Very, very dedicated lady. She worked very hard to be the best at everything that she put her mind to. She was a great paramedic, a great friend, a great mentor. Whenever I was in school to become a paramedic, I did a lot of my ride time with her. She drove a chase car at the time because she was the deputy director, and so I went to a lot of scenes with her first before the ambulance showed up, and she did a lot of teaching and letting me kind of learn, and then she would guide me as I went, helping me to make my own decisions, but then also like guiding my knowledge too so that I didn't make mistakes. I remember one time we had went out on a diabetic patient together, and it was right whenever it was getting to snow, and it was an icy day, and the weather hadn't come yet on our way out there, but then as we were leaving, we were coming down a gravel road, and like the intersection kind of teed off, and so we were coming down this gravel hill, and then we were either going to have to turn left or right because it went down to a valley if you went forward, and the road had ice since we went to that house, and we ended up nearly crashing down off the road, and that was the funniest experience. Like, we were laughing the whole way back, and it was very terrifying. But she was just a great mentor, a great teacher to everybody that she met. She was always the very welcoming one whenever somebody started.
Her brother Jonathan agrees that she was a mentor to others, but he also describes her as driven.
In 2007, and got done with class, did all my clinicals, did all my testing, got certified, and I asked her, I said, they're starting another class. Would you be interested in taking it, becoming an EMT with me? She said, yeah. But you had to know Devonnia. She always had to one you up on everything. I stayed as an EMT. I moved towards the fire and rescue side of things. But she, even though we're both still working full-time EMS, she was not going to be outdone by me whatsoever. From there, from EMT, she went to become an advanced EMT, worked her way up to intermediate EMT, which they don't have anymore, and bridged over to paramedic, and became a supervisor at an EMS service, got promoted to deputy director at the EMS service here in Washington County, and transferred over to Scott County as their deputy director. She was very driven, very dedicated to the job. She loved what she did. She was a mentor to everybody, even me. Even though I've been doing this longer, she was always willing to help teach me some things I didn't know. And
Devonnia's presence was always felt, with oftentimes needed and after a tough 911 call.
When I met Devonnia, I was 15 years old, coming into an EMS station that I had never been in before, and she was always so welcoming. She was funny, and she loved what she did, and I always wanted to be like her. We got our paramedic around the same time, and then we went on to work EMS together for the last 15 years. She was so funny, and she had this laugh that was so distinctly hers, and she always was like, she was always into just checking on people, and she would always make sure that you were okay. And I remember a time that I had my first pediatric 911, and she met me in the bay of the station, and she pulled me out of the truck and gave me a big hug, and she said, "It sucks right now, but it's not always going to be this hard." And I never forgot that.
Devonnia is missed every day by those who worked with her and by her family. But Devonnia's death would not be something that she would want everyone to be sad about. She would want it to mean something and hopefully save other people's lives in the future. The Amniotic Fluid Embolism Foundation would be an organization that Devonnia would 100% be behind, because they want to save lives too. The Amniotic Fluid Embolism Foundation is an organization that is committed to finding the cause of an AFE and preventing it in the future. They work to bring the information and resources to families affected by AFE. The AFE Foundation has helped 2,300 families on their journey with AFE. The AFE Foundation is a patient advocacy organization. It is ran and led by individuals, family members, and healthcare providers that have been impacted by AFE. The three main initiatives of the AFE Foundation are: 1. Research to better understand this rare, confusing, and unpredictable condition during childbirth. 2. Education for healthcare providers, because it is an infrequent event, which provides an educational course on AFE and simulations that better prepares the healthcare teams and practices for an AFE event. 3. And provides a support arm for all families who have been impacted by AFE and for those loved ones that have lost someone due to an AFE. Mrs. Miranda Klassen is an Executive Director of the Amniotic Fluid Embolism Foundation.
I am the Executive Director of the Amniotic Fluid Embolism Foundation, and I came into this work through my own personal experience with an AFE. It occurred during the birth of our first and only child, a son, back in 2008. And as someone who had done a lot of research around pregnancy or pregnancy complications going into my delivery, I had never heard of amniotic fluid embolism. I was one of the fortunate ones to survive something so catastrophic in childbirth, and I felt that that opportunity to have a second chance at life shouldn't be wasted, and I really felt compelled to do something not only about the cause of amniotic fluid embolism, but also to support families who've been impacted or devastated by AFE.
Amniotic fluid embolism, or AFE, is a rare condition when amniotic fluid enters the bloodstream of a pregnant person during labor or immediately after childbirth and causes an allergic reaction. Mrs. Klassen goes into greater detail.
An An amniotic fluid embolism is a birth complication that most often occurs during labor. So that means if in active labor. Now, it can happen at other times throughout the pregnancy, but it's most commonly involved during labor. We believe it starts with amniotic fluid, which is the fluid that surrounds the baby, enters the mom's circulation system. Now, this is a normally benign, uncomplicated thing that happens to women and birthing persons as they're delivering. However, in some cases, some of us have a catastrophic immune reaction to the entrance of this material, whether it's cells from the baby, whether it's cells from our own fluid that's surrounding the baby. But this essentially gets into the mom's circulation, and it immediately goes to her lungs. And we believe that once it hits the lungs, it starts a series of events that create sudden lung and heart complications, which is called cardiovascular collapse. This looks like breathing problems, blood pressure problems, and this is sudden and very acute. And then it also initiates a complicated bleeding issue whereby it tells the blood in the body to clot, immediately clot wherever it is. And it uses up all its clotting factors. But unfortunately, once it uses up all those clotting factors, now the blood cannot clot anymore. And so you have this overwhelming hemorrhage. So you have two systems, both the heart and lungs and the blood, that are involved. Each one of those systems is fatal in and of itself. When you combine those two complex pathways, it makes for an extremely fatal complication. It's often fatal, one, because of how serious it is, but also because resuscitation measures to support a patient are only as good as the facility or the hospital that they're in. So if a hospital doesn't have an ICU or doesn't have a blood bank, it can be really hard to save patients' lives. And what's even more challenging is when you have the best of care and you are in a hospital that has all the resources available. Some women have this overwhelming response where it's like a spectrum disorder where I liken it to a bee sting. So some people can be stung by a bee and it will be a mild irritant, and some people will be stung by a bee and have a catastrophic anaphylactic-like reaction. So an amniotic fluid embolism is similar to that. It involves the immune system. There is no way to predict, prevent, or treat an AFE.
The mother isn't the only person involved. The baby could too have complications due to an AFE.
I think anytime we talk about birth complications or pregnancy complications, what's important to recognize is we have two patients, sometimes even more, right? We have a mom and we have a baby. And I think what's really challenging is because this happens in labor, in the laboring process, and it frequently happens before a baby is delivered, that when you have a mom who has a sudden cardiovascular collapse where her heart and lungs stop working, that's how the baby is receiving its own oxygen and its own nutrients. So when a mom's heart stops, a baby's heart is soon to follow. And what can happen is if we don't deliver the baby quickly, then we can deal with a lot of brain damage that can happen to a child that's delivered in these circumstances.
When asked how the foundation's work to help families across America, Mrs. Klassen replied, "An AFE event happens in 1 in 40,000 pregnancies. There are roughly 4 million deliveries a year in the United States, so it's only going to affect about 100 families per year in the U.S. So in terms, it is a fairly small community, but it's a very loving and supportive community. Some of the ways we help our families, especially those who are grieving, are offering resources and support for them to find their peers. So, for example, a young widower who has lost his partner, it's very challenging for them to have young children and manage their own grief as well. We provide opportunities for them to connect with peers, and that goes for all the different family members and community members around a single person who's passed away. She also says we provide them a space through our support groups where they can talk about their loved one We also offer celebrations on their birthdays. We do not forget birthdays. We have a candlelight visual every year that we host on March 27th, where we take an hour and allow that time for us to reflect and remember these beautiful souls that were lost in such an admirable way. It's the greatest gift. It's the gift of life, and yet it can take your life.
We also offer guides walking them through like those early days in terms of helping them understand what an AFE is, helping them understand what happened to their loved one's body. And then we offer them hope by way of the research that we're doing. I think that's the most important thing that people want to know, is that their loved one's passing wasn't in vain, that we are doing research so that we can try and find a way to prevent it, to predict it, to treat it. And even those who pass away can contribute to our research. And so I think we offer a lot of hope, and we also offer a lot of comfort.
With amniotic fluid embolism events being so rare, how does the foundation raise awareness?
When we talk about amniotic fluid embolism, it's a fine line between awareness and making sure that we give a real good call to action. So anytime you're raising awareness about something, what people want to know when they read something tragic is, well, what can I do? How can I help? And so when we talk about awareness, this is not something we want everyone to be aware of. This is not a household name that probably everybody should know, because it is a rare disorder. And we don't have any actions that individuals could take to prevent it from happening. So what we try and say is, for those who are interested in learning more about it is important to know that things can happen during pregnancy and during delivery. So ensuring that you have your affairs in order, ensuring that you have everything sort of buttoned up legally in terms of if you're married, if you're unmarried, making sure that you have a living will or a trust. Life insurance, those are all really important things to have, because unfortunately in the United States, giving birth isn't guaranteed that it's going to go swimmingly. Another reason why we raise awareness in this space is really to allow healthcare providers. The biggest way people can help is by talking to labor and delivery professionals. So that could be an obstetrician, a midwife, a labor and delivery nurse, a doula, and make sure that they're aware that an amniotic fluid embolism does occur. Are they prepared? Are they ready for it? Another important aspect of raising awareness about amniotic fluid embolism is just recognizing, again, 4 million births in the United States. This will only happen to 100 people, but we don't know who those 100 people are. So in my opinion, all 4 million people are at risk for this happening to them, because we don't know who it happens to. So I think just making sure that your hospital is aware and prepared for critical events like this, if you have a choice of where you can deliver, and then also funding our research. Most often, people give to causes they believe in, that they've been personally impacted by. And for us, that can be challenging because we don't impact a lot of people. And so the general public can certainly help with donations that allow us to fund our research and our education, because we believe those two avenues is where we're going to save lives.
If someone wanted to get involved and support the AFE Foundation, what would be the best way to do that?
There's so many different things that we offer. We offer a state liaison program where individuals can work on our behalf to contact local hospitals to make sure that they have our resources. They can participate in any of our awareness events. So if you go to our website, afesupport.org, and click on Get Involved, there's a list of ways that people can participate.
What does the future look like for the foundation?
But we're forward thinking. What does the next 15 years look like in terms of technology, in terms of AI, and what can be done in research? And that's why we want to make sure that we collect the specimens and tissues, because we know there's a lot of really smart people out there, and we think that that's the future. We think that is the future of AFE, is to study the tissues and identify, is there a genetic component to it? Is there something that makes us more susceptible to it? And hopefully derive a test that will allow for prediction or prevention.
Finally, when thinking about Devonnia, Mrs. Klassen thinks about how she was and is a hero.
You know, when we do this work, we get to know the families pretty intimately. And I will say this, this work is entirely dedicated to those who lose their lives. And Devonnia is someone who was a hero. She was a hero in so many ways. She was a hero to her kids. She was a hero to her husband. She was a hero to her community. And I think what is the juxtaposition of having someone who literally saves lives lose their life in the process of giving life is just a complete tragedy. And if there's any way that we can continue her incredible legacy through blood drives, through awareness, through telling her story and letting her kids and her family know just how incredible of a human she was, I believe that her legacy is going to be bright. It's already saving lives through blood drives and raising awareness. And we're just incredibly privileged to be a part of her legacy. What an incredible, selfless human she was.